Hello and welcome to the Fragrance Report, a podcast where we explore the interconnection of art, culture, and perfume. I'm your host Anya, and today's podcast will focus on the dawn of the 20th century. The beginning of the 1900s was a critical turning point in the perfume industry. The world was on the brink of global conflict, and the 1900 Paris exhibition universelle served as a microcosm of the era's innovations, especially in the field of perfumery. For those of you new to the Fragrance Report, we publish a new episode of this podcast every Wednesday on Spotify and YouTube. As usual, we're going to kick things off with some fragrance favorites. These are the perfumes that I've been testing / loving over the last week. We're going to kick things off with a brand that's rather new to me. This is Curatricx. They are a fragrance house that launched 9 fragrances last year in 2024, and they very much focus on storytelling. Their muse is a citizen of the world that has all these experiences, and they are inspired by, in this collection specifically, they're inspired by old world, Hollywood, mystery, and these 2 fragrances very much reflect that. So one is called Deadly Nightcap, and then the other is called Cold Blooded. I would highly recommend going on their website to look at the story behind these and their other fragrances, because it's quite elaborate, very well thought out. I'm very happy that they sent me these 2 fragrances, specifically because after looking at all the fragrances they had in the line, I was very much struck by these 2, because I find that these 2 contain notes that I don't often see in other fragrances, one of which is the only fragrance with this particular note that I currently have in my collection. So let's get into these fragrances. The first is Deadly Nightcap. As the name may suggest, this is inspired by a poisonous cocktail. This fragrance is an aromatic woody fragrance with notes of Campari, orange, and cardamom at the top, a mid of juniper berry, gin, and cypress, and then a base of vetiver, cedarwood, and fir. When I first smelled this fragrance, I really got a lot of fruitiness. That was super apparent to me, like right as soon as I smelled it out of the box. But now that it has had a chance to kind of settle after getting delivered to me, I can definitely smell the other more aromatic tones of this fragrance. I smell the bitterness of the Campari that is very much evident, and there's also a very apparent juniper berry here as well. I also do get the cardamom a bit, so I feel like this is a very kind of realistic portrayal of Campari. It's a very full-bodied, citrusy, fruity Campari fragrance that also mimics the same like aromatic facets that gin or Campari would have as well. So it's a very compelling perfume. This is again Deadly Nightcap. And then of course my favorite one is Cold Blooded. This is the more unique one out of the 2, if I do say so myself. It's a woody ambery fragrance with top notes of chestnut, pimento, pink pepper, and smoke, a mid of clary, sage, gunpowder, and labdanum, and then a base of cedarwood, patchouli, and styrax. I feel like this is the kind of fragrance that could be a basic, it could be like a very versatile, all-encompassing little black dress kind of scent, but there's also a bit of nuance to it. There's a bit of uniqueness. Think this is the equivalent of a pair of black boots that are easy to wear everywhere, except that these black boots are made of like this like shiny sequin material that obviously is not as common as like your plain leather black boots, but you can't really see it unless you directly look at it and you study it and you observe this article of clothing. Same thing, that's the same way I feel about this. So it seems like a lightly powdery, neutral fragrance with some herbal facets to it, with some kind of like amberiness. But dig a little bit deeper and you will get like kind of like the uniqueness. You'll discover that the powderiness is actually kind of like this like smoky gunpowder like scent. You will get a little bit of pepperiness with that pepper. These are 2 fragrances that I'm definitely still trying out, but so far I really like what I've experienced with these. As I already mentioned, Cold Blooded is my firm favorite. I think it's such a beautiful scent. This was immediately the scent that I knew, okay, this is going to be a scent that I can easily just like whip out and wear whenever I want something a little bit different, a little bit special and unique, but still versatile. This is going to be that fragrance for me. So yes, again, Very happy that they sent me these fragrances, and I'm looking forward to trying more. But so far, so good. These look really interesting. Next up is a fragrance from Chabaud. This is called La Nuit Dance. This is a perfume that I was looking forward to receiving because I have obviously talked a lot to you about Chabaud and their signature Lactonic Gourmands, but they do have some other fragrances as well, not just their Lactonic Gourmands, which is what I wanted to explore. La Nuit Dance is a fragrance that has a gourmand note of rice, but it also focuses on some light powdery florals, and that's really what comes through in this fragrance. And there's also the addition of violet, which in this particular case comes off kind of like a light lipstick. It's a very interesting fragrance. I'm still working on getting through it. It's a perfume that when I first got it, like I think it just needed time to settle because I was only really getting like these clean powdery florals, but now I'm starting to get like this beautiful kind of like waxy lipstick accord coming from the violet. So let me give you a better breakdown of the notes. We have a top note of bergamot, a mid of floral notes, violet, heliotrope, and jasmine, and then a base of vanilla, rice, tonka bean, and sandalwood. So this perfume, oh my gosh, yeah, I can definitely smell the violet, and it's a kind of like it's not like a pure lipstick smell. There's some nuance to it. I get like a lipstick accord weaving in and out of the fragrance, but I also get a clean powderiness with the floral notes. And then I get a touch of the rice, but the rice, to be honest, comes through more on skin, and it's definitely not a prominent player. What I see as a prominent player are the powdery floral notes and the violet. It's a very compelling fragrance. Again, looking forward to experimenting with more with this fragrance and trying it out, and I will keep you updated as I do so. Some other fragrances I've established as firm favorites in my collection. If you are a regular viewer, you might already recognize a lot of these scents. The first up is Sunble Bleach by Une Nuit Nomade. There is something very comforting about this fragrance, and I think it's the fact that this fragrance does have a linen note. There's like a note here that's like light fabric, like kind of bleached fabric. That's what I get with this. There's also a really beautiful base of sandalwood. This is the kind of fragrance that you want to wear when it's a hot summer day. You want to smell like absolutely beautiful and elegant, but you also don't want to smell like you're trying too hard. This is the fragrance for that purpose. This bottle was gifted to me by Une Nuit Nomade, and I do have a code with them. It's Anya 10. Same thing actually with Chabaud as well, if you want to try out some of their fragrances. This is a beautiful summer fragrance, and as things have been getting a little bit warmer here where I live, I've been gravitating towards this because this is truly a comforting fragrance to me. I have a lot of really positive scent associations with that particular perfume. And then some other favorites, favorites that I've been loving and wearing over and over again. We have Grove by the Sea by Arquiste. I am making a mini dent in this perfume. I'm definitely getting a lot of wear out of it. This has turned into one of my most complimented fragrances lately because the sillage on this is rather lovely, and I do think that this scent has some properties to it that could be interpreted as calming. It's a very soothing fragrance. It's some aromatic. It's there's fig, there's olive. It's a stunning perfume. I love it so much. A Grove by the Sea by Arquiste. You've probably heard me talk about it a lot. And I've also had the idea to pair it with Cult of Caires Once Minerale. This is a gorgeous perfume that includes some aromatic notes, that includes lychee aldehyde, which translates to the smell of hot steam, and some yuzu, which is in fact a bitter citrus. If you want a fragrance with a superior sillage, a fragrance that will really last, this is a must try in my personal opinion. Of course, I also love Grove by the Sea, but I would say this is more of a mid-tier performer. This is more of like a moderate performer. Still beautiful, still love it. It's definitely one of my favorite fragrances right now. I wear it constantly. But yes, those are the fragrances that certainly have been capturing my attention. These are perfumes that I definitely would recommend, and they're scents that I have been wearing and testing out in my own rotation as well. Before we Before we begin with the history portion of this episode, I think it's critical to outline the relevance of a global exhibition like the Paris Exhibition Universelle that took place in 1900. Keep in mind, my French is really terrible, so my pronunciation is most likely way off, but this was essentially an exposition to showcase new designs, innovations, inventions, and the perfume industry played a big role in this greater exhibition that took place in Paris. The exposition characterized perfumery as part of the chemical industry, and it was listed under Group 14, Class Number 90, and this was a significant shift, and this prominence of the perfume industry at this exhibition really cemented the industrialization of the perfume world into something that was now becoming available for mass production. It was part of industrialization. This podcast is inspired in large part by an article in Fragrantica called How Did the Perfume 20th Century Begin? This article was written by Galina Ani, and it opens like this. 125 years ago, in April 1900, the Exposition Universelle opened in Paris, marking the dawn of a new century and becoming a symbol of Art Nouveau. It was a time of peace in Europe, of progress, of scientific, technological, and cultural flourishing, a golden age of aviation and automobile manufacturing, archaeological discoveries, advances in medicine and chemistry, including perfumery, the arts, and cinema. And yet, this area proved fragile. Colonial wars, political tension, and social inequality would soon lead to World War I and revolution. The Paris exhibition would run until November 1900, and it would welcome 50 million visitors. The article goes on to describe how Russia had the largest national pavilion, and its participants, including perfume houses, received more than 1,500 awards. Keep in mind, World War II was just around the corner. The Russian Revolution would soon come to pass. But if we look back at the exhibition, the Russian pavilion was so fantastical that they even erected buildings to function as a part of this exhibition. And the buildings erected for the exhibition echoed the architecture of the Moscow and Kazan Kremlins. Another thing that I want to note about the architecture goes as quoted. There were large painted panels and sketches by Konstantin Korovin, buildings designed by Fyodor Shetstel and Robert Friedrich Meltzer, a display dedicated to the Trans-Siberian Railway, and a crafts section built as a wooden village street with izbas, manor houses, and a church. Even the Lifsa ironworks were there, showcasing the roofing iron used on the Cathedral of Notre Dame in Paris. I would definitely recommend reading Fragrantica's article because they have a wealth of really interesting anecdotes and more information from the exhibition, but I do want to spend some time diving into the brands that were showcasing their products at the Paris exhibition. The first brand we're going to talk about is one of the well-known ones. This is, of course, Gerlan. The house was established in 1828 and is and was known as one of the oldest perfume houses still operable in Europe. And it was actually founded by Francois Pascal Gerlan. And by the time the exhibition occurred in 1900, this fragrance house was already known for its luxurious scents and widespread influence. At the Exposition Universelle, Gerlan presented a range of fragrances. They were known for their notoriety at international events, and they were specifically known for their use of naturals, but by this time they were already experimenting with synthetics. Known for their fragrance Jiki, which was released in 1888, this was one of their first attempts at a synthetic blend, and it's known as one of the first modern fragrances in general to include synthetic elements. This was a forward-thinking approach to perfumery at the time, and it was this blend that allowed Gerlan to stay at the forefront of innovation and arguably really made it deserve its spot at such a prominent event. Another fragrance house that I actually did not know about until I started researching for this particular video was Cherus. So Cherus was a major perfumery house based in Grasse, the perfume capital of France, of course. At this time, Grasse was becoming notorious as a premier supplier for naturals like rose, violet, jasmine, and lavender. And being based in Grasse, Cherus was very much known for pioneering advanced and more modern extraction techniques when it came to really leveraging these naturals in perfume creation. At the exposition itself, Cherus was an important player, and the house was particularly influential in revolutionizing the production of floral absolutes using solvent extraction, a method that replaced the labor-intensive enfleurage process. This allowed for a more efficient production of essential oils and flower extracts, significantly lowering the cost and expanding the reach of these ingredients. As a result, Cherus was one of the first brands to introduce solvent-extracted absolutes to the global market. By improving efficiency in production, they helped establish the foundations for mass production in the fragrance industry, which would be a key component in the 20th century's massive perfume boom. Additionally, Cherus trained many of the perfumers who would go on to create iconic fragrances in the decades to follow, such as Ernest Beau and Francois Coty. Unfortunately, there are some fragrance brands that have faded into obscurity since the 1900 exhibition, one of which is Kudray CE. And this was one of the older brands present at the exhibition. They were known for their luxury perfumes, and they were especially known for really beautiful and well-made bottle designs. And over the years, they would kind of fade into obscurity, as I already mentioned, but their presence at the exhibition is still something to note. And at the exhibition itself, they stood out with their beautifully packaged perfumes, which often featured really detailed engravings and intricate glasswork. Many of the French colonies also participated in this exhibition, providing locally sourced materials to the attendees, including jasmine from Tunisia, rosewood oil from J.U.S, and vetiver from Réunion. If I'm mispronouncing again, I'm very sorry. But this was a time when colonial resources were, of course, integral to the perfume industry, and this exhibition did serve to highlight that in some way. Another thing to note is that this exhibition, along with the displays, the exhibits, and the fragrances themselves that were featured at this event, really highlighted the Art Nouveau movement, which was an artistic movement that roughly translates to new art. And this was a movement that originated in the 1890s and ended at around 1910, but this was a movement that was meant to act as a counterculture to the rapid industrialization that was occurring during this period. It was a callback to beauty, craftsmanship, and nature's organic forms. And in perfumery, it was not only a visual influence, but also a full artistic reimagining of what fragrance could be, creating an artistic representation of the scents themselves, but also the visual representation of the perfumes and the artistic expression of the people creating the scents. Even the bottle designs of the perfumes at this time were a nod to Art Nouveau, with organic forms, nature-inspired imagery such as flowers, and scents that were often inspired by elements of nature such as animalic notes, woody notes, and florals. I think this kind of exhibition is really interesting to look back on because this was truly one of the turning points for the industrialization in the perfume industry that we now experience and benefit from today. If you think about the other Fragrance Report episodes that we've talked about, prior to the 1900s, the only people that could really afford to indulge in a variety of fragrances were really wealthy clientele, were people that could indulge in this luxury. But post 1900, with all the innovations that we talked about, with the new resources that were available that were more widely used, brands could now cater towards a larger demographic of people, which is something that we're still feeling the effects of today. I mean, that's why we're all able to buy fragrances, in part because of industrialization. And I think that's really fascinating. So let me know, what did you think of this episode? Are there any elements, any parts of this exhibition that you found particularly interesting? And if you'd like some more information about this topic, I highly suggest reading the Fragrantica article. I think they dived into the granular aspects of this exhibition really effectively, respectively. There were some, nuances, some little tidbits of information that I did not cover in this episode. So if you want to do a deeper dive, definitely check out their article. I'd highly recommend you do so. But that's it for this episode of the Fragrance Report. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed this episode and found it as fascinating as I did, and I'll see you next time. Bye. This episode's music was brought to you by Kevin McLeod over at Incompetech. This is Beauty Flow by Kevin McLeod at Incompetech.com and is licensed under Creative Commons by Attribution 4.0 license.